Howdy, and welcome to LeeReads, where I talk about the science fiction and fantasy that I've been reading and enjoying lately. Today, I'm going to review two books that I think everybody should read. A memory called Empire and A Desolation called Peace by Arkady Martine. These are adult science fiction novels that definitely slide right into the space opera category, especially by the second book. A Memory of Empire won the Hugo Award in 2020, which I think was very well deserved. The story primarily follows a young woman named Mahit Desmar, who is from a government of people called stationers. They basically are miners and spacefarers. They live on space stations, the main one being Desolation Station, and they don't live on planet. As the story opens, Mahit is in the shuttle on her way to the capital city of the Empire that brushes up with her people. Mahit has just become the ambassador from her people to the Kalani Empire, an expansive empire that borders her people's government, which sort of rules with an iron fist and controls many planetary systems. Her people on Desolation Station have been struggling for generations to remain independent from the Kalani Empire, and so far they have friendly relations. But Mahit has just been called to the capital city for the first time because the previous ambassador, a man named Iskander Agavin, has died. An interesting little bit of technology that stationers have that is top secret and no one in the Empire knows about or is supposed to know about is something called an imago machine. And it's basically the memory, personality, and experiences of someone that is downloaded in a little device into someone else. The way stationers have this set up is it's by career lines. So there are a line of pilots that may share an imago memory, or there are a line of government counselors that share an imago memory that is supposed to help bring them experience and knowledge to help them tackle their career. So Mahit has just been implanted with an imago device of the previous ambassador, Iskander. The problem was Iskander hadn't been back to the station for a while to update his imago machine, so the device that Mahit was implanted with is about 15 years out of date. The story opens, Mahit with Iskander implanted in her brain only for a few months, so they're not really interconnected yet. They haven't really formed one new person yet. Are about to land on the surface of the capital city. The very first stop is to the morgue to figure out, why did Iskander die? Was it natural causes? Was he murdered? If he was murdered, was it for a political reason? And what does that mean for Desolation Station in relation to the Empire? And on a more personal level, what does it mean for Mahit? Is she in danger? Because her imago machine is so out of date, she doesn't know the answer to these questions. She doesn't know what Iskander, the ambassador, has been doing for the last 15 years and can only try to figure it out with the younger version of Iskander that she has in her head. One encounter that Mahit has at the opening chapter of the book that made me kind of realize, yeah, I think I'm going to enjoy this book, is she's musing to Iskander in her head, wondering, what in the world would you have done to make the Empire or make someone want to kill you on the planet? And his response is kind of a, sedition, probably. And that really sets the tone for what we're getting into. The story opens kind of on an investigatorial note, where we're figuring out what happened to Iskander, but then Mahit quickly realizes that she is in danger too. Shortly after arriving on the planet, she has an experience that really messes with her imago machine and fizzles it out. And Mahit doesn't know if this is permanent or a temporary situation. She's basically now a fish out of water. Now Mahit is in danger, trying to figure out what's going on and her position within this diplomatic kind of political intrigue that's happening. And the anchor that she's supposed to have, that knowledge base and the experiences and all the previous relationships that Iskander built with the Empire, all of that she was supposed to have through her imago machine, she doesn't have anymore. Thankfully, she does make allies along the way. The Empire assigns her a liaison to help her navigate her way throughout the city. Because the Empire is a little bit self-absorbed. It truly feels as though it, especially the capital city, is the center of the universe, and that everyone else out there, all the other human governments, everybody else either wants to be a citizen or ought to want to be a citizen. And if you're not a citizen, they look at you a little bit like you're a barbarian. Mahit struggles with that throughout the story, even as she's been raised learning everything she can about the imperial culture, learning the language, learning how they think, and she loves it. So it's a bit of a tug of war between loving this imperial culture that's trying to absorb her and her station's independence, but also pushing back against the idea that just because you're not a citizen, you must be a barbarian. One aspect that I really loved about this story is the dry humor. Even though Mahit spends a majority of the book sort of panicking and trying to figure out what's going on and making mistakes, there's still humor in it. It's a very human story and the connections that she makes with her liaison and the other characters that she encounters. It's a very character-driven story, and yet the pace of the plot propels you ever forward. There's also really great world building. We spend a majority of the first book, A Memory Called Empire, really settling into the capital city, experiencing it through Mahit's eyes, learning about that culture. And then in book 2, without getting too much into spoilers, we get to see what stationer life is like from an outside perspective, and then what it's like to be on the fringes of the empire, basically on the battlefront, because in true space opera faction, there has to be some alien interaction and risk of total war breaking out. All in all, I think that both of these books, A Memory Called Empire and A Desolation Called Peace, are very fun reads. They have a lot of world building to kind of sink your teeth into, but yet you don't get bogged down in it. If you're into audiobooks, the audiobook is very, very good for A Memory Called Empire. I haven't yet listened to the audiobook for A Desolation Called Peace, but I want to listen to it. If you're interested in reading a space opera that really anchors you in its characters, it's not just flinging you from one perspective to another, but it anchors you in one character with a few supporting characters, I think that you would enjoy this book. It's character driven. It's pretty emotional at points. I felt like Mahit was extremely relatable, and the other characters that we meet throughout as well are very well written, and you understand why they're doing what they're doing, even if you don't necessarily agree with what they're doing. The pacing is very good. I never found myself getting bored. There was always something else that was happening or something else that needed to be done. And the world building, the cultures that are represented here, and the idea of how people from different perspectives view other people is very interesting. There's also a tiny thread of a blossoming romance throughout this story, but it's not overpowering. It's sort of there in the background and subtle, but it is there if you enjoy that kind of thing. All in all, I give both books 2 thumbs way up. I really believe that A Memory Called Empire deserved the award that it won, and I think that A Desolation Called Peace is a very strong second book in the series that builds on some of the character growth that we see. It opens up the world a lot, but it also ties a lot of the plot threads together, and it's a very satisfying sequel to the first book, so I highly recommend that you read both. Let me know, have you read these books? What did you think about them? I have seen some mixed reviews, so I'm really interested to hear other people's perspectives on the story. Mine is that you should definitely give it a go. And if you're in doubt, give the audiobook a go first, because it'll help with some of the tricky pronunciations within the story. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And don't forget to support your local library. Bye.